Okay, so in this video I'm going to look at a couple of pairs and make my predictions on them using daily range theory, and then have a couple of setups going into the coming week and so the pairs I'll be looking at, four pairs, which will be Gbpjpy, silver, Euraud, and then Usdcad. And so I'm starting off with Gbpjpy, and currently on the monthly, you can see that we have a monthly fair value gap which is currently rejecting price to the lower side, right? So let me mark that out. So this is what we have on the monthly. Then we see that even though price did push above the fair value gap, we did not have any meaningful closes above the 50% of the fair value gap. So like ICT said, bodies tell the story, the wicks do the damage. And so with this, I'm anticipating that we would at least target the lows of this candle, this, or this, right? So going into the weekly time frame, let me expand this so that we see that this is that monthly fair value gap, and then we had a weekly fair value gap right above it. So that is where the wicks formed in the monthly, and so it was also price also rejected this bearish fair value gap, rejected price to the downside, and then we are currently going down. And so looking at what's presented right here, I'm going to mark my dealing range from this high to that low and see where we are currently in price. And so you see that this fair value gap was at a 75 dealing range, right? And then this gap is just above the 50% of the dealing range. We've pushed into it and then we are rejecting downwards. And at the 25 dealing range, what I see is a fair value gap at this place. But we've dipped into that fair value gap, and so we should expect a low, right? A swing low formed inside of that fair value gap. Let me just go into the daily and 4 hour and see if that, yeah, this is what I was talking about. A low, a swing low inside of that fair value gap. So go back into the weekly, and so that low inside of the 25 DRT could also be a target, and the remainder of this fair value gap, right? And the remainder of this fair value gap could also be a target, and then you can see that there's a fair value gap here and a fair value gap which has been disrespected. So this could be what, a BPR. This could serve as the BPR, right? And so this could also be a target going into next week. So we go down there. So going into the daily, I'll see if I can find anything that would suggest that we are going down. Yeah, so currently on the weekly, so on the daily, what we see is that we have this fair value gap, daily fair value gap, bearish fair value gap. See, rejected, came down from the bearish fair value gap here, went into that, came down, formed another bearish fair value gap here. Then I anticipate that this daily fair value gap will hold price and push it to the downside. And then currently you can see that price has made a high here and a low here, sweeping this sell side liquidity. We've swept the buy side liquidity here, swept buy side liquidity here as well. Let me back. We could decide to use this low or maintain the original low, the actual low we marked, So let me just get this right here. And so I would reduce my dealing range to this place, and then see where we are currently in price with this. So maintaining the low, the original low of the range, and then this side we see that we have displaced through the 75, no, not displaced through, displaced through the 50% of this gap, run into it, and then currently displaced through the 75 DRT level and left a fair value gap, a daily fair value gap. And then this is the monthly fair value gap which we are coming from, right? And so what I am anticipating is that we run into this and then come down into this BPR, which was at the 25% of the original dealing range, right? Which was at the 25% of the original dealing range. We cleared this low, and then this swing low inside of the what do you call it, inside of the fair value gap. And then possibly, should price break through this, we could go on and then target this low and then that low. Okay, and so I would take this monthly fair value gap off and then replace it with this daily fair value gap, so that it keeps things simple. So going into the week, what I would be anticipating is that I want to see this fair value gap hold firm, resist price towards this place, right, towards the swing low inside of the 50, just below the 50%, and then possibly the 50% of this BPR. So going into the 4-hour, this is what I want to see. This 4-hour fair value gap, I want to see it disrespected, and then move into the daily fair value gap before we come down here. So the trade setup is going to be this, this, or you could just start from the low on the 50%, right? So good. So target the swing low, which is just about here, or the 50%, and then cover the high of the fair value gap. In case we have any strong wicks in there, we have that covered. And then that's a 4.25 R. And so this is the trade setup for Gbpjpy. But let me just go into the 1 hour and see if I can reduce this, I can make this any better. Okay, so I think even in the 1 hour that would be fine. And so from there you can target here or even here. Okay, and even here is a 3.84 R, at the 50% is a 4.3 R, and so this is a good trade for me. Then this is what I'm anticipating will go into. So moving on to the next, I'll do Usdcad. Okay. I already made the analysis on it, so let me take these off before we continue. Yeah, so because they are in the lower time, we are in the low, that's why it's like that. But let me go through the whole process here so that we see. So on the monthly, what I see is that we've traded above, and then I see nothing here because this month has not ended, so this is not a confirmed. It looks like it will be a fair value gap, but it's not confirmed. But let me go into the 3-monthly chart and then have a look at something. So on the 3-monthly chart, there is this fair value gap right here. There is this fair value gap right here, this bullish fair value gap. So here. And so this tells me that once we have failed to disrespect this fair value gap to the low, we should be going up, which is evident right here, right? Not rocket science. Everyone can see this. It's going up. And so logical places to target on the buy side are here and then here. Oh, not what I wanted. So clone that. Then we have these relatively equal highs over here. So since we are moving here and going up, we've already hit this place, grab liquidity at the bodies, right? And so I'll see if we have momentum to continue up and then take this relatively equal highs over there. So now going into the lower time frames, first going to the monthly. So I know that we are targeting this place next. So I want to see bullish PD arrays support my idea towards this place. So moving into the weekly, I want to see if there's anything in there for me that I can use. So on the weekly, we've seen that price traded into this fair value gap and then moved upwards, going up. But currently nothing solid for me like a fair value gap or a proper order block for me to free my idea around. So I move into the daily. There we have, and so inside of the daily, this is evident. So inside of the daily, we have this order block right here on the daily, this bullish order block right here on the daily time frame, and then there's a tiny fair value gap right here. Would be difficult for you to see, but if you check your chart, it is evident over there. And so there is this tiny fair value gap right here, very tiny fair value gap. That's a bullish fair value gap. So in confluence with this order block, I want to see price hold firm in this region and then move up. And then in drawing my range, I would on the daily, I'll take this high to this low, and then we see that currently we are at the 50% of the dealing range. We've dipped into discount inside of this bullish order block, right? We are respecting the order block at the moment, and I want to see price remain firm and then start targeting buy side liquidity and into this relatively equal high on the monthly. So let's go into the 4-hour and then see how we can frame an idea around what could potentially happen next week. And so what I like to do when I'm on my time frame is that the entry time frame, okay, let me leave this alone. I like to paint out. So we know that since we are looking for buys, this should be the sell side of the curve, which is up there. It's not really evident over here because of how extensive the data has been. And so what we expect on the other side is the buy curve. We expect on the other side is the buy curve. Oh, come on. Good. So just trying to get this. Yeah, so trying to get the buy side of the curve. And so we have this. And so currently this is what we should be having. So this is the sell side, and so we are supposed to have we should have the buy curve, or that's what I'm anticipating. And so I would want to see us create, bullish fair value gaps, order blocks, whatever, inverted fair value gaps, so that we move up towards the buy side liquidity, disrespecting this fair value gap at the 75 DRT, so that we're able to smash through that. But if price doesn't do that and continues to rally down or go down, then we would have to look at other ideas. But currently what I would want to see is that a push up, a fair value gap, and then we continue to the upside, right? And so on the 1 hour, for example, I would want to see price remain firm inside here, and we are currently at the 50%. So push up, fair value gap, something, a bullish PDRA, and then we move up towards that. And so something like this, and then we go up. That is the idea I have. So we could have a fair value gap right here, our fair value gap within this region, and then the setup could be this. So then target whatever you want, whatever your trading plan tells you to. Then that is for Usdcad. So I'm bullish on Usdcad, and this is what I want to see, the idea I have, and I want to see price play out in this way for me to get what I want. But I would basically wait for a push up, a fair value gap, another block, inverted fair value gap, something, a bullish PDRA, and then enter on that. If it doesn't give me that and then it continues to go down, then I would have to reframe my idea and then adjust so that I get into the trade. So going into Euraud, yeah. So for Euraud, I've already done the analysis, so let me go through them again. Let me go through it again and then share my thoughts on how I arrive at, so this is Euraud. Anyway, from Euraud, with this long wick right here, I wouldn't mark my range from here, right? I would rather consider the bodies. Then that's something you can do. Go for body to body or wick to wick. But with this long wick here, I'd rather prefer body to body. And then currently, you see that you cannot find any, PDRA unless you consider this as a bullish order block where we've rejected, which has rejected price one, twice, and then it's pushing price to the downside. And when you look at it as well, you see that there is, price is finding resistance at this level, right? Price is finding resistance at this level. So when I draw my fib from here to the low of the body, you actually see that the high of this wick, the high of that wick, where does it fall? Exactly at the 75% of the DRT level before it starts moving downwards, right? Before it starts moving downwards. And so going into the lower time frame, going to the weekly, I would like to see anything that would give me the idea that we are going down. And currently, with the way the past week closed, it's quite evident that we'll be moving down. Then places I would like to see targeted at this low, and then at least this order block right here, right? This order block right here, and then there's a tiny fair value gap just close to it. so this low. But then let me go into the daily as well and see if there's anything meaningful. Okay, so on the daily here, you see how we traded down into this fair value gap. We are coming down again. We have created this weekly bearish fair value gap, and I would want to see price get into it. Oh, not what I wanted. I want to see price push up into this fair value gap, daily fair value gap. So internal to external, right? Into this, and then we move down. And then let me see if I can frame a range here. Well, with what we have here currently, it will be difficult for me to, you know, draw my range, but then it's evident that from the monthly time frame that we are going into discount, right? And so I would like to see this, and then we drop lower. Let me go into the weekly again, and then mark the places here. I said I wanted to see targeted, so I said I wanted to see this low targeted, so we move into this, and then we target at least this low, or this, other block which is paired with this tiny fair value gap, and so right here. And so going into the daily now, we have this, and then into the 4-hour, we have the places where we would want to target, right? So we could target here, we could target there, and then at the 50%, at the 50% of that daily fair value gap, we realize that there's a tiny fair value gap on the 4-hour. And so what I would like to see is that price pushes up into that, and then at least gives us that low on the weekly, and then we adjust our stop to this place, and then that's a 3.98 R for Euraud. So what we are looking for basically is the sell side of the curve, basically, right? Let me just lock this up. Oh, wait, let me get this off first. Let me get this off. Draw the sell side of the curve. Good. So what we are looking for is the sell side of the curve here, and then we have this. So on the higher time frame, when we go up, we can, so this is the sell side of the curve, what we are looking for. On the higher time frame, we can frame it better, what we want to see with exactly this is what I mean. So this is the buy side of the curve going up, and then this is the sell side of the curve we are looking for. So at least to this low, we can target that, and then that's a good risk to reward, in my opinion. So that is it. And then the last pair I'll be looking at is silver there. So this is what and I also have my analysis. I already have my analysis on this, and so yeah, this is what I want to see. So we have the sell side of the curve here, this is the buy side of the curve. But let me run through how I got to this process, so that so on the monthly, it's evident that we are in a bullish market because bullish PDRs are holding. We've run into this bullish order block. We are going up, right? And then on the weekly, this is it. Then I also made a video on a trade which I already did. I have a video on that trade. It's already on the channel, so you can check that out if you wish to. So we've run into this fair value, this weekly fair value gap right here, and then we are moving up, right? So we are bullish. Right, so we have moved into that. So we want to go up, and what I see here as well is this bearish fair value gap on the weekly, just above there, right? And so going into the week, I want to see price disrespect this fair value gap, but I'm also very cautious because it could reverse. But I am bullish on this, and I'm biased towards seeing price disrespect this weekly fair value gap and then going up to target this high right here. So going into the daily, this is what I'm seeing, right? So I can mark my range from this low to this high because we've grabbed liquidity to the left. We've grabbed liquidity to the left of this, right over here. And so drawing my range, this is what I see here. Good. And then we see that this fair value gap actually lies at the 25 DRT level, right? 25 daily range level. And so on the daily chart, we dipped into it, created a swing low, ran above, left this fair value gap, dropped into the fair value gap, and we are currently pushing up. And then this is why I'm saying I want to see price disrespect this bearish fair value gap, weekly bearish fair value gap, and then continue to target higher prices, right? Continue to target higher prices to that. So with this swing low being formed at a key DRT level and inside of a weekly fair value gap, I would adjust my dealing range to this place and then take off this weekly fair value gap to make the drawings this. Yeah, so getting this into frame, this is how I'm going to frame my idea of the trade going into next week. And so when you look at this as well, you see that we have traded from the low, the 0 to the 25. We see that we have these 1 2 3 4 5 6 down closed candles. Price dips into that fair value gap here, runs above, creates this bullish fair value gap, uses as support to run above these consecutively down closed candles, right? And then inside we form this bearish fair value gap. We form this inverted fair value gap. Inside this inverted fair value gap, now once we run back into that order block and into that inverted fair value gap, see what happens. Price holds firm in there, failing to close below the 50% of that inverse fair value gap. And just there at that inverse fair value gap, at that confluence, we can find is this tiny fair value. Let me enlarge this so that right, we have this fair value gap in there. We have these two down closed candles which form the order block, and then we see that the wick of the order block falls in line with the upper quadrant of the inverted fair value gap, right here. And so we have a lot of confluences around in this region, which tells us that we are going what? We are going up. And so price runs into there, it holds firm, and then we start pushing up. See how we traded above the 25 DRT level, ran back into it, failed to have anybody closures, just wicked into it, and then we start going up again on there. And so going into next week, what I want to see is price going up and then possibly disrespecting this weekly fair value gap, or at least reach the 50%. If it doesn't disrespect, at least reach the 50%. So I want to see price go up, but preferably break through this fair value gap. Yes, this bearish fair value gap, and continue, and then framing the market maker model. You can see that this is the sell side of the curve, this is the sell side of the curve, and then we can have the buy side, which this will be the buy side of the curve. Oh, I moved the wrong so then this becomes the buy side of the curve. So we've had this, so we want to see this. So going into the next week, I want to see price push up, form a fair value gap, and then we'll continue. So we could also look for the setup in the 1 hour. Then when you look at the 1 hour, you can see how just at the 50% we pretend this fair value gap, this order block, which is coming from this inverted fair value gap. So we've pushed into it, failed to close below the 25. So I want to see a fair value gap up, and then we continue to trade up through this bearish weekly fair value gap, and then create the buy side of the dealing range. And so these are what I am expecting going into the coming week for these pairs that I have. I have just discussed. And so if you're in the trade, if you're in the market next week, do your own analysis, trust your own analysis, trust your own strategy, and then do what you have to do, you're supposed to do in the market. So all the best.